Proceeding with our next panel discussion, financial fraud and its impact. In this discussion, panelists will talk about the need for creating awareness around banking and other kinds of fraud. Please join me in welcoming our panelists up on the stage.
Thanks, Vibhav. And I think this is going to be a pretty interesting session, although a very quick one. So I think all of us in this room at some point of time, we have got an SMS saying your electricity bill is due, click here, or your KYC is expiring, so click on this link. All kind of ways of phishing for your information on your phone, right? So, in fact, the number of frauds, according to RBI data, has actually come down in India. Just to give you some numbers, 13,530 instances of banking fraud last year. This is RBI data. The actual numbers would be much higher. Amount involved was down to 30,252 crore rupees, the amount involved in the fraud, which was down by nearly 50%. The previous year, it was something like 59,000 crores. And most of these frauds have happened in the digital payment space, credit card space, UPI space. Because, I mean, as easy as it is to just click a QR code and make a payment, awareness, I think, is a big problem in the country today. The fraudsters are always one step ahead, no matter how much of two-factor authentication, whatever kind of KYC you do, they're always one step ahead. Now, the implications of financial fraud are huge, and I have a very varied panel over here. So do you think, the speed at which India has rolled out digital payments, especially after demonetization, because till then everybody was, used to carrying a bunch of cash and dealing in cash payments everywhere. But the moment demonetization happened, that's when we first saw digital payments coming in, and it came in really fast. You had like Paytm, PhonePe, MobiKwik, everybody coming in one after the other. You think that has got something to do with the level of frauds we are seeing because the consumer is not aware? Let's just start with you, Amit.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I think we need to understand the overall pattern. We were discussing when we were outside, right? Why this is happening overall. Why this explosion of frauds by the financial inclusion or basically making online payments and all that. So there is a pattern in each and every industry, which basically is a very real pattern. So before this, there was the e-commerce era where Flipkarts and Amazon and multiple e-commerce companies came in, and they started basically penetrating tier 3 and tier 4 cities. And not a lot of laws or those things were there in India. And we started seeing some frauds in e-commerce, right? Overall, not many, but some frauds related to e-commerce, and at a bigger level. And slowly and gradually, government agencies realized that okay, these frauds are happening, and they created some policies and then some more, laws around how basically e-commerce companies should operate overall in the ecosystem. And now, if you will see, it is quite streamlined. A lot of small e-commerce companies which were not able to, afford that kind of a legal system and they have gone now or got acquired, and there are few big ones only left. Similarly, this era is happening with the financial inclusion, and naturally demonetization helped to basically give a clear path to a lot of startups, and there was not a lot of, and lending, all the financial institutions, NFBCs and whatnot, a lot of laws and policies were not clear, and people just started their businesses, being the capitalist economy. And slowly and gradually we found that there were leaks in the system, and all these fraudsters are basically trying to find these leaks across the overall ecosystem, be it QR code, OTP, or any other kind of scam, right? Running call centers, fooling people. But slowly and gradually, I think there will be some laws which will come, which might impact the user experience overall going forward. But then there has to be a balance, right? Very clearly, it's a high time. There has to be some laws which basically brings common people trust in the system, in the financial system, the overall development of industry.
Right. So Rayan, I mean, he was talking about building trust in the system. How can we go about doing that? Because the number of campaigns, whatever we do now, the number of frauds have been so much that you don't trust a new form of payment. Someone says like, मैं आपको code भेज रहा हूँ, उसमें payment कर लो. You're like, ये आपके code है, and you kind of, there's a bit of mistrust in the system. How do you bring in the trust?
So with Mr. Bachchan telling everyone, जागरूक बनिए and समझदार बनिए, Even that has not worked. So my point is that people do have trust in the system. I don't think people don't have trust in the system per se. A very good example of this would be UPI. UPI does not have a global benchmark. So it's a new technology that did not exist anywhere in the world. We've never seen it in any other country. We are setting the benchmarks for it.
22 countries are looking for the technology now from.
Yes, Singapore, Dubai, we know. So the point is that cards have been around for 50 years, banking even slightly, before that, etc. But if you see in the last 7 years, of course, demonetization did give it a push, as you mentioned. But from the top to the bottom strata of India accepted UPI as a form of payments. Even when demonetization is gone, all of you have the option to go back to cash. You're not. Plus, I know a lot of Gen Z audience and everyone who don't carry a wallet. Either ways, for men, carrying a wallet is an issue. But the UPI kind of solved that for all of us. So my point is, it's not, and even the rising frauds and everything, you see, people do have trust in the system. It's not that they don't. Look at Mahadev app. Right? So, of course, don't look at the scam part of it, but people did trust that, they will, it will work, etc. So I don't think that is the problem. I think the issue is something very different. I'll give you a very recent example that happened. So there is some person in Neo Group, the executive assistant to the chairman. She got an email from Rayan Malhotra that I need some money, 10,000 rupees, because my card is not working and I'm abroad, etc. on Diwali. Educated, she's from Edelweiss, she's as creamier as they can be. She fell for it. She gave 10,000 rupees thinking I needed that money. So again, she has seen all the Amitabh Bachchan ads. She knows how to use digital payments. She has trust in the system. That is not the problem. It is just that you cannot ever create any solution or any society which will never have financial frauds. We'll talk more about it as we go, but this is one idea I'll keep in your head. There cannot be no fraud society. There can be a low fraud society, maybe.
Right. If I have to come to Mr. Anand Agarwal, we in India, we've got probably one of the safest payment mechanisms because we have two-factor authentication. Our KYC norms are very strong, and yet, despite having all of this, the fraudster is always one step ahead. Why is that?
See, I think the biggest thing in this thing is the user awareness. I mean, irrespective of whatever strong technology things you put in place, there is always an angle of user awareness that creates a problem. Now, I give an example. I've seen some senior people in IT itself sending some links that, look, Tata Motor is doing some anniversary, this thing, so why don't you look at this thing? So, general public still looks at it, but some people in IT were doing it, that is one part of it. So, that is, I think that other thing is that when you have to have any such kind of thing, there is a element of fear in something. So, if something happens, would I be able to get immediate support from somebody? With somebody there whom I can raise issue and that issue will get addressed immediately. I think that is another thing which can help build some kind of trust into this particular thing. Third thing could be in terms of, I would say that some kind of mechanism to take feedbacks. Now, if we take that feedback may help in terms of identifying some potential issue, could be. It will also help in terms of some improvement in the product. And most important of all that is the ultimate is the technology. And there could be certain vulnerabilities in the technology. So we must keep doing regular security audits and vulnerabilities identification and keep plugging them so as to ensure that at least whatever is known is plugged immediately. You rightly said in the beginning that Forrester will always be ahead of us. But we would, and the security people will always be in a chasing mode. So it's always a cat and mouse game. But it is that how efficiently we are running, I think that is the one which is only thing.
Right. And if I have to come to you, Abhishek, especially in the call center business. Now there, a large part of, we are so used to getting calls from banks, from insurance companies, all that. your insurance policy is due, your bank something is due, and you've been associated in the call center space, which is why there's a kind of a trust in the call center system that, okay, this call is coming genuinely from the bank. But in many cases of financial fraud, maybe many of you have seen the series on Netflix, Jamtara. There are people sitting in a field somewhere in, Bihar or Jharkhand, and then kind of making these, or Madhya Pradesh, and making these calls from there. And the moment they find something fishy, they just switch SIM cards. So one was the accessibility to SIM cards, and then setting up these virtual call centers in these places. How can one be sure that the call is coming from a genuine call center like that?
Well, see, Truecaller kind of helps these days. So
Yeah.
you can look at the number of spam reports, but yes, that can be misleading. You cannot trust anything which is coming, because there is no means to prove that any telephone number is associated unless it's a main number displayed on the site. So India does have a facility that caller IDs cannot be spoofed over the regular telecom network until it's a SIP call that's getting originated out of India, which is very expensive for a fraud like that. So that is something which is good in India as far as the telecom is concerned. So you cannot spoof a number. The number that is coming is a genuine number. You can backtrack it to, if you can backtrack it to somebody with help of legal guys. Only thing is that if you want to be safe from a call center perspective, is keep your lock and key separate. So whatever information you are parting, make sure that you are not providing the lock and the key to the person who is calling you or whosoever you want to. Make sure that it's the correct information that you are providing. Make sure you don't explicitly trust somebody. बिजली का बिल आप नहीं पे करेंगे तो कोई काटने आपके घर आएगा, मैसेज आजकल कोई नहीं करता है. मे भी करेगा भी तो you don't know. So there are various ways and as far as the previous speaker also concerned, it's all related to either greed or anger or lust. Somewhere something is being offered as a prize, which probably was not there at the moment. No bank will give you a free loan or ask for an OTP or give you money just because you have to have it. So that is how the apps are also doing it. So make sure that you have your lock and key separate and provide the information. If you really need it, just don't provide it in a spurt of a second.
Okay. So always look for the genuine number. And I think another big issue, I think, in this case is that a lot of people, especially when you're in trouble, you bought something, your device is not working, the first thing you do is go to Google and look for customer care number for that company. And more often than not, the first and second link you find on Google would be some scam number.
That will be advertisement always. So that is how Google, I didn't say the name, so the search engines work. So
Yeah.
make sure that you search for the right website, see the right telephone number and contact them. Just don't do a Google search. Always get back on the back of your card or your documentation where you have the authentic website address. Go back to that. Don't rely on Google search to find the customer care number. If you don't have it, just dump the product.
Okay. So actually coming back to UPI, because that's actually in the eye of the storm right now, while it is one of the best technologies and it has made our lives really convenient. I mean, these days I leave home with only the phone. I very rarely carry my wallet these days because the wallet is in the phone. Everything is in the phone. My credit card, my UPI, everything. So I just leave home with the phone and make sure it's charged, right? But UPI now, because of the number of UPI frauds we've had, so recently there's been talk that the RBI is considering giving a 4-hour window to reverse transactions which are above 2,000 rupees. What kind of impact do you see that having on the user experience? One. Two, would that give rise to certain other kinds of fraud now? I mean, where the customer can actually order a meal on Zomato and then after he's eaten his meal, say like, I didn't order this meal, and then reverse the transaction. Who wants to take this? Ryan, you take this, or then after that, Amit? Even.
So the short answer, the second one is yes, it will give rise. So for those of you who don't know the context, to curb the UPI frauds, and we'll come to UPI frauds in a second, RBI is considering that now you can pay someone above 2,000 rupees and then withdraw, like recall that money within 4 hours. Now the point is, I can go to a restaurant, take my family, as Roshun told us. He gave us an idea. You take your family for lunch and then you pay, and then 2 hours later you can refund that money. So it's a 100% cashback deal. Now, I hope this stays in the RBI discussion boards, and this also comes up. Some Rayan there gives them this use case and it gets shelved. Having said that, I'll tell you two, three points here on UPI. So UPI has the lion's share when it comes to frauds. About 60 to 65% of all payment frauds today are UPI. What is more surprising is that it has happened in such a short time, because UPI has been there for a short time. I'll give you a personal example. So we launched a product called SlayPay, and it was a loadable card. So you can load money and you can pay. And UPI, most of you have used online payment flows for UPI. So you have an option to enter your VPA, virtual payment address. So what the hacker was doing, incidentally from Jharkhand, by the way, the most cases came from there. So we were also jam tarad that way. So the hacker, so let's say your number is 9810014101. It's a fictitious number, not my phone number, don't dial. Now, what the hacker would do is he'll add this mobile number @Paytm. Most of us have a Paytm UPI account. We created it years back, don't use it anymore. Then he'll change the last digit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on. He'll call people up and he'll say, I've just sent you a request, you'll get 10,000 rupees, as this gentleman told, ki, the Tata ka offer hai jo bhi, you'll get 10,000 rupees. 10-15 में से एक बंदा फंसता है. 1 or 2 people do fall for it. He just makes 1,000 calls, right? And we got very excited. We said, see, payments are increasing. Our app is doing so well. We are getting so many payments in a day and all. And later we got a call from Cyber Cell Jharkhand. There is a case that there's a chargeback on your case and all accounts get frozen and all that. Point I'm trying to make is I'm giving you an example just so that you can also be aware of things that, these things happen. But having said that, so again, UPI is susceptible to fraud more than other things. But as Amit just mentioned, that it takes time for things to evolve. What we forget is, as I said, UPI does not have a global parallel. It has not been done before. It's the first time it is being done in any country. Payment cards started in 1970. It's been 50 years since payment cards are there. In 1990s, you had the first sort of online transactions. In 2010, you had the first OTP coming. So it took 20, 30, 40 years for that to evolve. UPI is very nascent. So it's 7 years now. Give it a few more years. I think it will be, it will improve, as again Amit just mentioned on that. Having said that, that 4-hour thing is ridiculous. I think that should be scrapped off.
Yeah, so I have a different view. Not 4-hour thing, but something has to be done, right? So there is major distrust in the system. I know a lot of elders who have been basically stuck in some frauds for lakhs. They've basically hardened money. Their retirement corpus got eroded due to these frauds. So it is, I think it's a huge responsibility of the financial institution, let's say Paytm, PhonePe, whosoever has created those systems, plus the government, to come in and see that what's happening on the ground and create some mechanism. Not this 2,000 rupee 4-hour thing is one thing, but there has to be some instruments which balances out this and brings trust in the system. Trust is missing. That has to be brought in. And now what will happen to this question? When the trust will come, there will be some things like user experience of a user. So probably you will be asked to enter few more passwords or some other mechanism to make sure that both parties know each other and, handshaking happens. Apart from PIN, there are other forms of, handshaking. The other thing can happen that, now while we are using all these in online payment systems, our credit ratings are building up, right? We don't know, but like all our credit ratings are building up across our platforms through our phone numbers. People who doesn't have PAN also, the credit ratings are getting built up on these platforms. Similar happened in China, actually, right? When Alipay was launched. So there might be, naturally, in few years, naturally it will be gone. But till then, we need to create a balance. Some mechanism has to be there to create, a balance between a user experience and the trust.
But do you think that it is possible to achieve? So again, as you mentioned, the only way to solve it is creating more user experience, taking user experience for a toss.
No, it will not be tossy, frankly.
No, but my question is that, do you think it is possible to achieve a solution where there will be no frauds?
No, I'm not saying we need to reduce it, right? Frauds will can't go anywhere. People are there to, breach. Right? We are in cybersecurity. Our jobs will get lost, right? If there are no fraud.
I'd like to get Anandan first and then
So, I think intention behind this thought process is good. There's certainly these frauds which are happening on UPI. I think so this news is as of yesterday only, and there's a lot of industry deliberations which are happening on how to implement this in the actual practical thing. And while in the short term, it might impact the user experience, because I would be forced to take some more steps, or I will frustrate यार 2,500 भी payment करनी है यार, वो तो कितना problem है. But as you rightly said, it will also lead, we Indians are pretty good in terms of exploiting the vulnerabilities. So we will order food and then reverse the money also. Yeah. That is the pitfall of it. But at the same time, I think some new methods of, like phone is the wallet, as you rightly said. And I personally experienced this 2 days back when I didn't have money in the wallet and realized that, and I said, okay, so this phone served my purpose for 2 days. So I think this facial recognition is something which we have not been using it, or the biometrics is something that we have not been using it effectively in the financial transactions. My view is that, very recently, we would have these two things become part of it, of any kind of financial transaction. Other thing, I don't know, my view, personal view is that, if today, whether I want to do 1,000 rupees transaction or I want to do 2 lakh rupees transaction, the authentication method is same. Somewhere we need to understand and differentiate the high value transaction and a low value or low risk transaction, so as to say, if I would say. Right. I think that would also come something in picture, and it will help in.
And like UPI Lite has come in where you don't need your PIN. UPI Lite, you can just pay like that straight away, right? So, Abhishek, you wanted to add?
See, there's a difference between a fraud and a hack. So what's happening is fraud. It's not a hack. So you can call it a process hack, but it's not a cyber hack that's happening on the app. So we as cybersecurity leaders can probably look at our systems, vulnerabilities, patch them and see. But on the user end, it's similar to the old movie Catch Me If You Can. So there were checks which were getting defrauded. Then companies started distrusting checks. They said that get me demand drafts made, then it was RTGS, and then NEFT, then UPS. So there will be a natural evolution process that will happen. There will be checks and balances that will come in picture. Maybe a facial recognition, a 3D thing might kick in as per the risk scores are concerned. But the gist of the discussion, which is around the value of this digital fraud or the financial impact it's making, it destroys the trust in the brand, which gets hit by the fraud, as mentioned. So if I am say for example a e-commerce player selling anything, and if a fraudulent transaction happens through via my platform, user loses the trust. So that is the financial impact that we are looking at. So that is the risk-based scoring of transaction, and verification is something that needs to be added as the third layer or the fourth layer of friction into the transactions to prevent and give another layer of protection to the organizations to prevent their brand image and the loss. Right. In US, it is a huge challenge. Chargebacks, the fraud-friendly chargebacks also. So, son using father's card, and then there's a chargeback. You have already used the product. It's just like the Zomato example. You have already done everything, and then say it's not my transaction.
No, you mentioned the trust in brands. For example, there are companies that make the software TeamViewer and AnyDesk, but they are being bashed so much because these are the main software that are used in most of these financial frauds, right? So the trust with these brands, which are actually genuine softwares for remote operations and remote diagnostics for your computer. So
So I want to add one more point. I think we've missed the one point that all these financial companies basically now can use the power of Gen AI and AI to detect multiple patterns, right? So you do want to invest, they can do some investment on some more, like I'm sure 50% of the frauds can be caught proactively by using AI and Gen AI, because there are a lot of patterns available in the ecosystem. For example, few phone numbers are used. I'm just hypothetically telling, few numbers are used and fraud is happening through some area, some particular numbers and all that. So it's like I'm sharing layman's example, but a lot of complex example which humankind can't process can be easily detected through these patterns also. But then a huge amount of investment is needed in these financial institutions, and generally startups can't afford them, and then they end up in doing a lot of things which basically overseas. Like, for example, he shared an example.
Yeah.
No, so now that you brought up AI, with the amount of data we have these days on our devices, on all the things that we use, can AI establish a pattern of your spending and then flag it in case there is a fraud likely to happen with your data? Something like that could happen, Ryan, since you deal with...
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are just...
And are you using AI in your system right now?
Yeah, we do. In fact, at Neo, we are creating wrong panel to say this, but we are creating India's first AI-based financial influencer. So it is, you can ask her questions about personal finance, etc. So we are using AI there. In terms of fraud and Razorpay, by the way, which is one of the biggest PG, payment gateway providers, they have integrated AI recently. I think it's been 1 year when, when AI has become mainstream, with ChatGPT's launch. Of course, it was there before that, but just mainstream has happened only 1 year back. AI plus ML can actually help you detect a lot of frauds. It can tell you patterns. And yeah, as you rightly said, it can definitely help. At the same time, I'm of that view wherein it's a cat and mouse game. And every one of you has watched Tom and Jerry, right? So every day Tom tries to catch Jerry. Some days it succeeds. Most days it fails. But then the next day they do it again. It does not matter how many tricks they use. It does not matter how many tricks Jerry learns. So it is that. I mean, you have to be safe. You have to be secured. At the end of the day, it's, you have to be liable for your money, and it is mostly greed or foolishness that lets you lose it.
Okay. So while we'll take just one last thing on this. How do we go about generating awareness? So the ads, Mr. Bachchan saying, the various ads with him. Beyond that, what can one do to ensure, the user is aware of the kinds of frauds that can happen?
Quickly, right? So whenever someone is getting onboarded on a product, people don't take, like, I'm talking about apps where you get onboarded.
Yeah.
So onboarding, all these trainings should be very, very strictly part of the onboarding process. So that as soon as a person is getting onboarded, he has to strictly take this. People don't do it because they think it creates friction, and people will not do that, right? And they will not install their app. Secondly, naturally, learning programs, overall awareness by various institutions have to be there. You already mentioned. But then I think gamification of all these things has to happen. Frequent messaging has to happen to the end users. Let's say if there is a new pattern getting formed, and through let's say I'm owner of an app, and there is a fraud which I have detected, it's my moral responsibility to send notifications to all the users, messaging, all that. So that kind of a framework has to happen. And actually there has to be law coming, law which makes sure that these things have to be done by each and every provider of these financial apps, right? So not only just ads by RBI or basically government, but these financial institution also has to do a lot of things. Onboarding, making people literate, because understand tier 3, tier 4 cities and lot of
Anand,
Yeah, I think apart from all the campaigns that is being run by the government or by the institutions, I think the first and foremost thing which I look at is that secure your own device. I think irrespective of any awareness campaign, if I am not able to secure my device by using, as we previously Amit Dubey talked about that he can just take away OTP, the 8 different ways. So I'm saying let's not use OTP. Why don't we use a biometrics or a facial kind of thing which is available on all the devices now? I think that is the first thing I would talk about. The second thing I would say is that before you install any app, just be sure that do you actually need this app, and verify the credentials on that app on the Google Play Store. So that is the second thing. And third thing is that if you have to make payment to anybody, just verify everything once again. Just simply don't get into that, this is the link, oh, let me just click and I will get something. Just look at, there's nothing free in this world. Why would somebody give you free of cost some 10,000 rupees? Just look at, just apply some mind. Otherwise, irrespective of any measure that government may put in, if we can't do these basic things at our own level, we won't. And I just want to add one more thing on the see, technology can play a limited role in it. At the end of it, how do we exploit the features provided by the technology? And I give you a very small example, and practical example. We all use credit cards, and most of the time now, most of the cards today are Wi-Fi enabled cards today.
Yeah.
Now, on your each of the company gives you functionality that you can limit the usage of Wi-Fi on the card. How many of us have actually applied that limit on the card? You can apply as low as 100 rupees to whatever it is. But I'm sure most of us may not have applied. It would be default limit of the credit card, which is being applied on the Wi-Fi also. This is very small. Small, if we can do this thing, no matter of this thing, technology, but this is I only have to do this particular activity. If any one of us in this room who has not done it, I would say that log into your online banking and just apply limit on contactless card with this thing. It's a one basic thing, and it will help in terms of, so you can set up limit on everything, how much you can withdraw on ATM, how much you can withdraw, how can you can spend on the e-commerce, how can you can spend on all these things. I think this small thing we should do on our own.
Right. Yeah, Abhishek?
Yeah. Again, so security versus fraud. So maybe a simple message on the payment app saying that if you are transferring money for lottery, call for electricity bill, please re-verify your transaction, might help reduce it. So awareness is the only thing that can help. If you want to safeguard yourself from hacking, keep your transaction phone different from your calling phone.
Right.
And safeguard that as we have been doing our wallets and physical cards and physical money. So that are the two things, simplest thing that can be done. So change your phone to a wallet phone, which is a separate phone which you do not use for playing Candy Crush. And, maybe the payment apps can add a message saying that if you're transferring money on a phone call for a lottery or please re-verify your transaction. That will help reduce it. It cannot eliminate it. Maybe apart from some other professions, thieves and fraudsters have existed since ages, so and they'll continue to exist.
Okay. Rayan, I'll let you have the last word, and then we'll wind up because time's up.
Sure. I'll just, for the comfort of the audience, most of these things are covered, so I'm not going to repeat that. I'll tell you about one latest fraud, right? And see, the apps and mobile apps and payment banking and everything is being bashed too much. I take offense to that because I build payment apps. There is a new fraud wherein an Amazon seller, Amazon delivery guy will call you. I'm sure you must have seen this. They call you and they'll say, there's a package. And then you say, I've not ordered any. And they say, okay, we'll cancel it. Just add *401# followed by a mobile number and just give it a missed call and the order will be cancelled. And what will happen is from that point on, your calls will be forwarded to that number. That, of course, is the hacker's number. So you'll get your OTPs on call and all that. Now, and people fall for that. And this is something that most of you won't know that *401# is used for call forwarding. So my point is, at the end of all of it, because we've all seen messages, we all have seen Mr. Bachchan, we've all seen ads. At the end of the day, as Amit again said, people need to be educated. At the end of the day, you need to be educated that you don't fall for it. You avoid it more than you can. But at the same time, as I said, once in let's say 10 times, you will fall for it because hackers are also getting smart. They are also using AI. They are also going to use ML. They'll also use new things.
Right. Thanks so much. I mean, the hacker is always one step ahead, and that's what keeps us all on our toes as well. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this panel, and I hope the audience got some good takeaways from this. We're out of time, so we'll take questions offline because we have to go on to the next panel right now. Thank you.